Well, good afternoon, everyone. All right, General Brunson, you need to speak up a little bit.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Look, thank you all for joining us at this contemporary military forum titled Landpower in the Indo-Pacific. My name is Jeff Smith. I am the Vice President for Business Development in L3 Harris Communication Systems, and I'm also a proud lifetime member of AUSA. We appreciate what the Association of the United States Army does for the Army and the total Army through educating, training, informing, and connecting what we see right here at AUSA's annual meeting. L3 Harris has partnered with the U.S. Army for nearly 7 decades. We also are a proud 4-star member and a 4-star sponsor for this year's annual meeting. From deep sensing to sensor to shooter, resilient communications and modernization of the network, night vision, integration of modular payloads, things like Apache crossbow, Aerojet Rocketdyne supporting ATACMS, Gimblers, PAC-3, etc. L3 Harris is committed to supporting the Army's operational imperatives and obviously the well-established modernization priorities. As your professional association, the United States Army, the Association of the United States Army is proud to provide forums like this throughout the year to broaden the knowledge base of Army professionals and those who support the Army. AUSA amplifies the U.S. Army's narrative and speaks for the voice and is the voice of the Army and the support of the soldier. I want to thank everybody for attending this afternoon's event. And at this time, I want to turn the floor over to Dr. Tom Carrico, who will be the moderator for this panel. He's a senior fellow in our National Security Program and the director of the Missile Defense Project at the Center for Strategic Studies. Dr. Carrico, over to you.
Thank you, General Smith. Appreciate it. And again, thanks to AUSA, as General Smith said, for providing this kind of forum. CSIS, I'm very happy to say, is partnering with AUSA for a new strategic Landpower dialogue that we just kicked off last month. So we're going to be doing a lot more of these things for the broader, beyond the Army discussions as well. As General Smith was saying, as I know you've heard from other folks over the last couple days, it's remarkable what a big deal this conference is. It's even more impressive to me when I realize just how small the core AUSA staff is. It is a small group of people that really pull this off, and that's why the memberships is being talked about everywhere. I signed up. I hope everybody else does too, because that's what keeps this thing afloat. So look, the Pacific is a big place. The Army is a big organization, and we got a lot to talk about today. And we've got 4 of just the best individuals to help us do so. First of all, of course, General Charles Flynn, Commander U.S. RPAC, will lead us off, and then we'll go to one of our closest allies in the region, our most important allies, Lieutenant General Kobayashi Hiroki, Vice Chief of Staff for Japan Ground Self-Defense Forces. Then we'll move down the line to Brigadier General Bernard Harrington, who's the commanding general of the 1st MDTF, Multi-Domain Task Force. And then because we really want to round it out, we'll have Colonel Michael Rose, the commander of the 3rd MDTF as well. So we'll start with opening remarks, and then we'll have a little discussion between us and then open it up to questions. We've got 2 mics here on the left and the right. Please don't be shy. If you don't ask questions, I'm going to keep doing so, and you don't want to listen to that for an hour and a half. So, General Flynn, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Tom. And again, thanks to AUSA. Tom, thanks for you to be here. And General Kobayashi, thank you. And General Morishita for coming this distance and participating in this panel. And to Bernie and Mike, thanks for being here and talking about the newest signature organizations in the Army, the Multi-Domain Task Forces. So I thought I'd start by going over a few things that I think are important for everyone in here to just contextualize as we have this discussion today. So there are 3 pillars in the National Defense Strategy. They are integrated deterrence, campaigning, and build enduring advantage. And those 3 pillars of the National Defense Strategy drive the theater campaign plan from Indo-Pacific, and they also drive U.S. Army Pacific's theater campaign plan in support of the combatant commander. There are three ways that U.S. Army Pacific is implementing the three pillars of the National Defense Strategy. The first is the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center. It's the first training center in nearly 50 years that the Army has created, and it is in the Pacific. And I'll talk in a little more detail about it, and I come back to that in a second. The second one is Operation Pathways, and Operation Pathways is our operational approach to campaigning in the region. And the third way is the creation and the building of joint interior lines. And I'll talk about what those interior lines consist of and how those interior lines are actually building enduring advantage. So let me go back to JPMRC. As many of you are aware, there's been a training center in Europe for almost 5 decades. There are 2 in the continental United States. The Army never had one in the Pacific, but we have one now. There's a Hawaii campus in an 8-island archipelago. Tropic jungle looks a lot like the region, and there's another campus up in Alaska that's connected between the Yukon and the Donnelly training area. Looks a lot like the region as well. Extreme cold weather, mountainous, and high altitude. 11th Airborne Division is obviously resident in Alaska, and the 25th Infantry Division is also resident in Hawaii. But maybe more importantly is there's a deployable version of JPMRC that has been extended into the region. It's been extended in the region in 21 and 22 in Indonesia, and then just this past year in 23, we connected to the Combat Training Center in Townsville, Australia, as part of Talisman Sabre. So 2 campuses, one in Hawaii, one in Alaska, and then multiple campuses of the deployable version of JPMRC in the region. And we're working with our allies and partners in the region to create one. In fact, Japan has one, a training center up on the northern island of Hokkaido. The Korean Rock Army has the KCTC on the Pen. Australia is creating a CTC down in Townsville, Australia. The Philippines are in discussions with us about creating one in Fort Magsaysay, one of the EDCA sites on the island of Luzon. There's 3 other locations on the islands of Sumatra, Java, and Borneo that spread across the 17,500 islands of Indonesia. And then there's a place in Thailand called Lopburi. The point I'm making is it's not just the training centers in Hawaii and Alaska, which look exactly like the region. It's the exportable version of the training center in the region. Why is that happening? Because the region sees the value of what our combat training centers represent, and they want to get that level of high-end training in their countries. So what does JPMRC do for us? It allows us to train in the region. We are surrounded by joint assets in Hawaii and Alaska, and we're also surrounded by joint and combined and multinational assets in the region. And at the training center, we generate readiness. And once that readiness is generated, we take it on the second way into the region through Operation Pathways. Operation Pathways is our operational approach to campaigning. What is campaigning? The definition of campaigning is that it's the logical and sequential arrangement of operations, activities, and investments that benefit U.S. national security objectives, and they also benefit national security objectives of our allies and partners. So when we have more than 40 joint and Army-to-Army exercises in the region, that is the logical and sequential arrangement of those OAIs, because our operational approach is to generate that readiness at training, apply the readiness in the region. And what are we doing with the readiness when we're in the region? We're building joint readiness for the joint force because we're operating as a joint force. The second thing we're doing is we're increasing the interoperability with our allies and partners. We're also increasing the confidence of our allies and partners in our tactics, techniques, and procedures, and then the capabilities and training that we share. And then the third thing, and this is most important, is we are denying key terrain to the PRC, human terrain and physical terrain. We are taking time and space away from them by being forward in the region with combat credible forces, and we are adversary focused. And we are conducting a series of rehearsals out there to do those three things as part of Operation Pathways. The third way is once we're committed inside the theater on Operation Pathways, we are building joint interior lines. What do the joint interior lines consist of? Command and control, sustainment, protection, and collection. We need to see, sense, and understand the region, share the information with our allies and partners so that everyone increases their indications and warnings and understands what's actually happening in the region with the adversaries, in the environment, and in the conditions that we're all competing in. Protection. This is counter-UAS. This is engineering for mobility and counter-mobility and survivability. It's medical protection. It's short-range air defense. It's mid-tier air defense with Patriot. It's upper-tier air defense with THAAD. Then sustainment. This is the activation of our Army pre-position stocks. It's the activation of our activity sets that we have forward. It's the building out of theater distribution centers in places like Korea, Japan, Guam, Philippines, Australia, Singapore, Thailand, you name it. And then the last thing is command and control. Command and control capabilities in the U.S. Army are second to none. There is nothing like a theater army and the theater enabling commands that go along with a theater army. There is nothing in the DoD inventory like a Corps headquarters. There is nothing in the DoD inventory like a Army division headquarters. They can be multinational, they can be combined, they can be international, and they can be interagency literally overnight. They've proven it every day, and they have proven it for the last 30 years. So the joint interior lines is us building forward positions to create enduring advantage, to create operational reach, and to build operational endurance for the joint force. There are three things that the Chinese have that we do not have. They have interior lines. They are 100 miles from Taiwan, and they are inside with their A2AD, the first island chain. The second thing they have is mass. The third thing they have is magazine depth. And what those joint interior lines are doing, along with Operation Pathways and along with training in the region, is to take time and space away from them, to deny key terrain, human and physical, and to keep our physical presence forward with hard power to deter a war from happening. The goal is no war. We already have a war in Europe. We have another war that just started this past week in the Middle East. We do not need another war in Asia, and that is the Landpower's contribution to the joint force to prevent that from happening. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Great, thank you. General Kobayashi.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lieutenant General Kobayashi from Japan, Vice Chief of Staff, Japan Ground Self-Defense Force. As General Morishita, Chief of Staff, my boss, is unable to attend today. So I got a message. I need to read this one. Yeah. So in the Indo-Pacific region, Japan is becoming a hot zone, facing so-called strategic three major fronts of Russia, North Korea, and China. In addition, the Indo-Pacific region is composed of oceans and islands. And therefore, there is a tendency for each nation to emphasize its naval and air force power while showing little interest in its army. On the other hand, land power enables the nation to protect its people and territory directly by providing a visible and physical presence throughout a territory or country. After the war has been opened up, the footprint will be shown as the front line of national defense, and the place where it exists will become the national border. History has proven that controlling land requires a commitment of land power. In the light of these circumstances, and take advantage of the revision of the three strategic documents issued last December, the JGSDF are working to fundamentally reinforce Japan's defense capability and strengthen collaboration with the U.S. forces based on the Japan-U.S. alliance. In addition to these efforts, the JGSDF is also promoting initiatives to strengthen cooperation with as many like-minded countries as possible. Also, there is a NATO in Europe, which is collective defense mechanism. Such an organization does not exist in the Indo-Pacific region. So it is important to deter the threats and maintain regional peace and stability by building a network through strengthening relations among allies and like-minded countries. In addition, as shown from the lessons learned from Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it is impossible for a single country to maintain sustainability and resiliency in a prolonged conflict only by its own efforts. And we recognize that it is important to enhance building multinational relations in this region. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I hope that this panel discussion will be a productive one with the Landpower network as the topics. Thank you.
Ooh.
Thank you. General Harrington.
Sir, gentlemen, panel, thank you so much. Bernie Harrington, I command the 1st Multi-Domain Task Force. And usually the first question that I get is, what is the Multi-Domain Task Force? Why does it exist? And what does it do? What's really important is to kind of rewind the clock a little bit. Back in 2017, General Milley, who was Chief of Staff of the Army at the time, stated that the U.S. was fundamentally out of position when you looked at China's A280 network, the Anti-Access Area Denial Network. We had several capabilities that were developing in space, cyber, electronic warfare. We were investing in long-range hypersonics, but when you looked at the Anti-Access Area Denial Network, we were fundamentally out of position to present multiple dilemmas back to an adversary when it came to that network. At the same time, Admiral Harris, who was the commander of PACOM at the time, stated that if the joint force was going to be successful, he needed the Army to be able to do 4 things successfully. He said, I need you to be able to sink ships. I need you to be able to shoot down aircraft and missiles. I need you to be able to neutralize satellites. And I need you to be able to hack and jam the enemy's C2 network. So when we started to look at all of those emerging capabilities, Army senior leaders at the time formed the Multi-Domain Task Force as the organization that would work directly for that joint force in order to synchronize those effects and present those multiple dilemmas. And what's really important is that that formation was formed without knowing exactly what the equipment would be that would enable that unit, this unit, to achieve its effects, which I think is really, really important when you start looking at the priority of continuous transformation and how we do that. So 2 key points as we look at the formation of the Multi-Domain Task Force. First, it is a joint force enabler. Even though we are an Army unit, we are assigned to the theater as a joint force enabler because we do not do anything by ourselves, and we are there to enable the joint force commander to accomplish that mission. The capabilities that we bring, the joint force commander runs that targeting process that enables speed and scale of application of those capabilities. Second is authorities. The authorities that we require to apply the effects that we are going to apply either reside at the Joint Task Force, or the Joint Task Force is able to get those authorities quickest to enable speed and scale of us presenting those multiple dilemmas to the adversary. And then in competition, we cannot do what the activities that we need to do without the authorities that reside within that combatant command. So it is critical that we are that joint force enabler. The second is the importance of land power in this theater. So as the Multi-Domain Task Force was developed and the study of the A280 network was done, you realize that the A280 network was really developed by China going to school on our capabilities when you look at Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm. The ability to strike with precision and then use shock and awe with large high-flying aircraft, launching off of capital craft in the Gulf and be able to achieve an effect. So when you look at China's Anti-Access Area Denial Network, it is really optimized towards high-flying aircraft, towards capital craft, and also towards some space and cyber denial to the force. The opportunity that we see is that what it is not optimized towards is small, scalable, survivable, maneuverable land forces that are able to provide an effect for that joint force, and the opportunity presents itself to be able to then operate in these small, scalable, survivable cells to provide multiple dilemmas for the enemy across all domains, whether it be in space, cyberspace, whether it be in land, whether it be maritime, like it does not matter. We are able across all 5 domains to be able to provide those effects. So the MDTF role, as we have formed and we are continuing to develop, when it comes to the A280 network, our role is to synchronize long-range precision effects, think non-kinetics, space, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, synchronize effects in those domains in order to enable long-range precision fires to neutralize a portion of that A280 network to enable that joint force commander freedom of movement. That is why we exist. How we do that is the MDTF has a multi-domain effects battalion. This is what provides our non-kinetic effects. This consists of a space company that uses expeditionary space equipment to really make sense of the environment. So as General Flynn talks about our support to intel, to joint targeting, our support to collection, these assets allow that support to occur and allows us to understand that environment. We also have a cyber company, defensive in nature in order to deploy forward and protect our networks, and when necessary, plan for offensive capabilities to be applied as well. We also have what we call an extended range sensing and effects company within our MDEB. What that allows is high altitude, long endurance, think multiple layers, whether it be at the terrestrial layer with emerging capabilities like TLS-EAB, in the air layer with experimental capability like K1000 UAS and multiple other air layer UAS, and then up to space, utilizing multiple payloads at multiple altitudes and multiple INTs in order to understand that environment and be able to enable that joint force commander. And our ability to do that allows us to understand the A280 network and look at those vulnerabilities. That is tied with our long-range fires battalion. Many are familiar with some of those capabilities. First is our HIMARS. Our HIMARS, 9 shooters right now, are ready, forward deployed, and as we speak, are actively campaigning in the first island chain alongside our allies and partners. We shoot those traditional munitions that many are familiar with, but we're also a part of that development of the precision strike missile that is coming on board in order to extend range and be able to engage multiple types of targets. We also have our mid-range capability. Our mid-range capability engages with SM-6, Standard Missile 6, and Tomahawk, and is developed, it is fielded, and it is a part of the first MDTF now. And over this past fiscal year, since the last AUSA, we tested both a ground-launched Standard Missile 6 and a ground-launched Tomahawk successfully, and now that unit, that battery, is fully certified and prepared to deploy to the first island chain in support of our campaigning objectives. We also have the long-range hypersonic weapons battery as well. That battery is fielded currently with the first MDTF, and that battery is certified. They work closely with the Rapid Capability and Critical Technologies Office for the Joint Flight Campaign for the missile, the all-up round plus canister, and then that battery is also prepared and scheduled to deploy to the second island chain in support of our campaigning objectives. So those two battalions together provide multiple options for the Joint Force Commander and present multiple dilemmas, both non-kinetically and kinetically. We also have a protection battalion that integrates with the theater protection plan as part of the holistic plan in order to protect organic assets that may require protection as we are forward, and also integrate the theater plan as well. That will be the indirect fire protection capability, and we're working closely with RICTO and industry and the enterprise as to the fielding and the operations of IFPC, which is key as IBCS comes online. our ability to plug and play multiple sensors, multiple shooters in order to provide that protection. And then we also have a sustainment battalion. That sustainment battalion is just flagging this month, and that provides us our ability to tie in with ATSC, with our allies and partners, in order to sustain those small multi-domain cells and C2 nodes that are forward in the first and second island chain. And then what I'd also like to say, the other way that we compete is really through our campaigning. And that is our ability to compete forward in the first island chain alongside our allies and partners. Today, we have soldiers actively deployed alongside the JGSDF in Japan, and we also have elements that are forward deployed in the Philippines alongside our AFP partners as well. We just completed Orient Shield side by side with the JGSDF, really working and nesting our MDO, our multi-domain operations concept, with the cross-domain operations concept, and really working those TTBs and those interoperability. And that interoperability is at the human level, where we're side by side in our command posts. It's at the technical level, where our systems are side by sides, and we're looking at how we are able to make the ones and zeros match. And then it's also the procedural capability. As we operate as part of the joint force, it's also the combined force. What are those processes that we are going to utilize in order to be effective to present those multiple dilemmas to the enemy? We also have established a combined information and effects fusion cell in the Philippines, really to enable an interior line of what does that network, what does that collection look like? And I think in Q&A we may be able to talk a little bit more about that. And then finally, what I'd say is we leverage all of this and we combine all of this side by side with 3rd MDTF that just stood up. And we have the charge of everything that we do and everything that we have learned, we share with 3rd MDTF to make sure that they are going at a pace exponentially faster than we did at 1st MDTF. And we combine all this to really have a combat credible force forward campaigning the first island chain for the objective to prevent war from happening. Thank you.
Great. Colonel Rose.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I'm going to resist the temptation to repeat everything that General Harrington just said. But I do want to add to it just a little bit, starting really with the piece that General Harrington highlighted last, which is the lessons learned that 1st MDTF, as the concept has started to materialize into people, into tactics, techniques, and procedures, and material solutions to solve some of these really difficult challenges, we've been the beneficiaries of that greatly. So 3rd MDTF stood up in September of last year, just before AUSA, so just hit our 1-year mark. In that time, we have deployed into the region. We have begun our contribution to campaigning and contributing to integrated deterrence and building relationships with partners and allies and learning lessons ourselves. We were able to do that principally because of the work for 4+ years that 1st MDTF had laid, as well as 2nd MDTF, our sister organization oriented to Europe, has been able to share with us. So extreme benefit to that. But there's more benefit than just learning lessons from 1st MDTF worth highlighting, and that's some of the things that General Harrington talked about with multiple dilemmas. So what do multiple MDTFs in the same AOR really provide? So as a theater army asset, the way that we see it and the way that we try to synchronize ourselves in support of General Flynn and the Joint Force objectives is multiple multi-domain task forces really provide some optionality for commanders to open up and leverage asymmetries against our adversary, whereas we can concentrate in particular areas to achieve effects in one phase of a potential crisis or conflict. We also are able to open a theater and create those multiple dilemmas in new geographic areas, something that you may not be able to accomplish with one singular formation to be able to integrate with the Joint Force. So we think about that quite a lot. Where in a phased conflict could we potentially provide some capability for the Joint Force commander? So we use campaigning, just like 1st MDTF does, to really help develop those options. And so the Pacific Pathways is how we get after that. And we invest in the relationships that we're starting to develop with our partners and allies. We are learning and contributing to our partners and allies' capability development in places throughout the region. particularly for us, we've got a very strong partnership, as General Harrington does in the Philippines and emerging with the JGSDF. We've got one similar to that in Australia. So we are going to be on that campaign of learning with the Australians as they develop their concept of employment that complements what we're building inside of our formation. Also, with that always that view in mind that we can potentially offer different asymmetric options to a commander in the different phases of a potential campaign. The other thing that we focus a lot of our time on, because we're new and we have not yet fielded a lot of the solutions for the long-range fires and the integrated force protection, is that we have the luxury of focusing on how do we actually plug into the joint networked command and control systems that are going to be so critically important for this fight at speed and scale in the Indo-Pacific AOR. So we are a routine participant in Indo-PACOM command and joint warfare exercises to exercise the emerging capability that they are establishing in order to blind, see, and kill our adversaries across the joint force at speed and scale. So we are taking those lessons learned and doing exactly what First MDTF has done for us along the way, and rapidly transitioning those back to our CONUS-based sister organization, so that as they plug into the joint force fight out here, they're ready to fall in on TTPs that we've helped develop. I'll hold there because I'm sure that we'll draw more out in some of the question and answer, but I appreciate the time.
Cool.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. Excellent opening remarks. I've got a couple questions I think I'll open up for. Please prep your own, and we'll turn over to audience in just a few minutes here. But, I'd be remiss if I didn't note, of course, the very significant and surprising, to some respects, attack that took place in Israel this past weekend. General Flynn, I've heard you say many times, you've talked many times about the centrality of land forces. And yes, there were some fun hang gliders and things like that, but it was a ground operation. And you saw that, of course, at the beginning of the Ukraine conflict last year. There were some early prognostications about the death of Landpower relative to other things. And sure enough, here we are today, and hasn't quite run out. So I wonder if you and other folks on the panel, if you'd like, kind of talk about how you think about what I've heard you talk about, the centrality of land forces, and certainly it's central in lots of other allies and partners over there. But the concept of interior lines is hard in the Pacific. That's a hard problem, and it's a multi-domain problem as well. So how do you think about the centrality in the Pacific, and more broadly in light of these conflicts? And then the interior alliance thing, I think, is especially intriguing.
Yep. A couple points I'd make, my panel members here talked about it. I think that, first of all, and General Harrington touched on this, the A2AD arsenal that the PRC have designed is primarily designed to defeat our power, air power and maritime power. And secondarily, it's designed to degrade, deny, and disrupt our space and cyber capabilities. It is not, however, designed to find, fix, and finish distributed, mobile, fixed, semi-fixed, reloadable, lethal, and non-lethal land power, land forces. We present a dilemma to them that they did not design into the A2AD arsenal that they built. And this has proven out in war game after war game after war game. So this idea, so that would be the first point I make. The second point I would make on this is that, and I've said this publicly many, many times, and I'll say it again, the theater that we operate in is largely viewed as an air and maritime theater because the map is blue. But if you look deeply at the map, 25% of the Earth's surface is in the Indo-Pacific. And 6 out of 10 people on the planet live out there. Soon to be 7 out of 10. So humans have this unique tendency to actually live on land, and they want to be protected. They want to be defended. And who does that in that region? Their armies do that in their region. Land power and the armies in the Indo-Pacific are an absolute central part of defending their national sovereignty and protecting their territorial integrity. Let me give you a couple of statistics. 65% of the Japanese ground self-defense forces 65% of the entire military in Japan is the Army. 70% of the Philippine military, Army. 75% of the Indonesian military, Army. 75% of the military in Thailand, Army. 80% of the military in India is the Army. The armies in this region are the dominant national security instrument. They are the force that actually conduct territorial defense. And so what the region is doing right now, and I'll use the Philippines as a very good example, and my partner General Kobayashi can talk about what Japan is doing with cross-domain operations, but the Philippines have 12 divisions. They have 11 infantry divisions and they have an armor division. And what they have been doing largely has been focused with counterinsurgency in Mindanao in the south. And what they're trying to do is reorganize, reorient, rearm, reshape their army to be able to defend 7,500 islands in an archipelago from the Luzon Strait all the way to south of Mindanao. So they're trying to take their land power and through combat training centers, through rehearsals and exercises, largely with the U.S. Army and parts of the Marine Corps and parts of Special Operations Forces, how to best organize their forces to be able to do that. And I could go country by country by country. Why? I'll tell you why, because the Chinese are violating their national sovereignty and they're penetrating their territorial integrity, trying to disrupt the very resources that they possess, and then trying to undermine and coerce their populations. And it's not resonating out there, and the countries are turning against it, and they're turning against it by participating more in multilateral and multinational operations and training and exercises that we are doing. And so I believe that the security architecture that actually binds this region together is land power. Why? Because the armies play a central role in territorial defense and protecting their national sovereignty. And so the army-to-army relationships that we foster, build, and advance every single day, that is actually the great counterweight against the PRC. And I have been watching this now for a decade and have been deeply involved in it, and I'm telling you, it is working, and it's working because the region is moving towards multilateral and multinational operations because of the irresponsible, insidious, and incremental approach that the Chinese are taking in the region. They're turning against it because they don't like it.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, General. まずはじめに陸上自衛隊のこのインド太平洋地域、特に中国正面の戦略環境情勢認識についてお話したいと思います。
So first, I'd like to tell you about my strategic awareness surrounding Japan, where the JGSEDF is located.
このインド太平洋地域には世界人口の約半数以上、そして世界経済の約 60% を占める活力の中核であります。
So the Indo-Pacific region covers half the population of the world and more than 60% of the global GDP.
しかしながら安全保障上の課題も多い地域であって、自由と民主主義、法の支配といった価値観がすべての国家で一様に共有されていません。
And also its area is vitality and the engine of global economic growth. At the same time, it's difficult. We cannot share the same value, the freedom of law and
共有されていない。
That's not shared.
合わせて中国について述べますが、東シナ海や南シナ海において力による一方的な現状の変更、これを継続しているところです。
And also excuse me, the interpreter mistook the translation last time, that we cannot share the freedom and the democracy, the rule of law, but concerning the situation that we faced the unilateral attempt to change the status quo by force is continuing.
特に東シナ海においては尖閣諸島周辺で領海・領空侵犯を繰り返しています。
And in East China Sea, we have seen a lot of territorial intrusion, sea and air.
先ほどフリン大将からあったアイランドチェーンのところを守る防衛するというのは極めて難しいミッションだと思っています。オペレーションだと思っています。
And General Flynn said that protecting island chain is a very critical but difficult mission for us.
私の前職については今陸幕の副長をやってますが第8師団長という師団長をやってました。
Now I am the Vice Chief of Staff, Grand Staff Office, but my former position was the 8th Division Commander.
第8師団は九州という日本本土に通常位置していて、事態が生じたときには南西の諸島に機動展開をしてきます。
8th Division is located in mainland in Japan, but in case of emergency, we deploy our units to southwestern area.
そこでフリン大将が先ほど言った国土を守るための当初守備部隊指揮官になります。
And then, as General Flynn said, the 8th Division commander became a commander to protect the nation, including the remote islands area.
そこで行われる戦闘はキネティック、ノンキネティックを組み合わせたクロスドメインオペレーションになります。
And the battle or combat there would be the combination or synchronization of non-kinetic and kinetic power.
しかしながら当初で作戦をするということは極めて難しいオペレーションになります。
However, my understanding is operating on the remote islands is very severe.
まず通信の話、兵站の話、C2 の話、火力の性能の話、これがすべて関わってきます。
The reason why I think is we need all the domains or areas, including signals, logistics, C2, and firepower. These are very key for the successful mission.
それゆえ、我々陸上自衛隊ではCDO、クロスドメインオペレーションと言ってますが、クロスドメインオペレーションと米陸軍のマルチドメインオペレーション、このシンクロナイゼーションは極めて重要になります。
Therefore, in order to protect our nation, the JGSDF cross-domain operation and the US multi-domain operation, this collaboration and synchronization is the key for successful mission.
ジェネラルについては先月まで日本でクロスドメインオペレーションと、CDO と MDO の共同訓練を行ってきたと聞きました。
General also participated in the Japan exercise, and you tested and demonstrated the synchronization of CDO and MDO.
このように日米の共同訓練というのは毎年続けられてますが、極めて重要な意義があると思っています。
So now we have been conducting the bilateral training in Japan and the US, and the training has exercise has really significant meaning.
基本的には中国を抑止するために対処能力は持っておかなければいけませんが、抑止するために日米が共に共同訓練をやる、それを発信するという意味は極めて大きいと思っています。
I think the deter of China is very important. In order to achieve that, we also need to improve our response capability. And through the bilateral exercise, we are able to demonstrate our capability and also disseminate and continue messaging toward such nations.
この目的を達成するためにフリン大将が提案するランドパワーネットワークは極めて重要なコンセプトだと思っています。
Therefore, I completely and definitely agree with the concept of Landpower network, which the General Flynn pointed out.
3つの重要なことがありまして、1つは人と人との連接が重要です。
First, I think I'd like to tell you the important three perspectives here. My understanding is the person-to-person communication.
2つ目が物と物の連接になります。
And the second one is the collaboration of materials and materials.
3つ目はプロシージャーとルール作りです。
And the third one is to establish the procedures and rules.
この3つをしっかりと日米で、しっかり詰めていく必要があると思っています。
I think that these three things we would like to synchronize together with, between Japan and the U.S.
That's it.
Well, General Kobayashi, you put a lot on the table there in terms of the multinational cooperation in the Pacific. So I wanted to just pause there and wanted to see if you, General Flynn, or either the MDTF commanders want to talk about some of that international cooperation that has been highlighted here.
I'll make a couple points, and then you guys can pile. I think a couple of really good examples of what I was describing before. So Garuda Shield in Indonesia in 20 was an Army-to-Army exercise. In 21, 22, and now 23, it's turned into a multinational exercise with anywhere from 12 to 15 nations participating, about 6,000 joint forces, joint multinational forces operating across a wide range of archipelagic island chain and distributed training locations. Go down to Talisman Sabre. Again, a decade ago, that was an Army-to-Army exercise. That's now a joint and combined exercise. 15 nations, 30,000 participating really from across the globe, okay? Go up to Yamasakura. Yamasakura is what it has been an Army-to-Army command post exercise between the U.S. and Japan. This year, it will be and last year, the same. We had an Australian division, Marine division, multiple Japanese ground self-defense force divisions. We have their ground component command, which is sort of the equivalent of a corps level command. First Corps is partnering with them, and then as many of you know, Japan's increased their national defense budget by a couple of %, and then they also wrote in there about the design of a joint command. So they're working their way through creating a joint command that would be sort of at the combatant command level, much like the Australians have in Australia, and then the ground component command. The point I'm making is you have observers from the Philippines there looking at divisions participating in Yamasakura. You have an Australian division participating in it, multiple U.S. division, Army, multiple or a Marine division, and then, of course, multiple divisions from the Japanese ground self-defense forces and their GCC. I guess the point I'm making is this is exactly the kind of example that I'm expressing about the region speaking through their actions about the irresponsible behavior that they're seeing with their eyes and in their territories, and they're responding by moving towards multinational events with the United States. And I think in large measure that has a great deal to do with the centrality of Landpower across the region. And I'll sort of jump over to Bernie and Mike. You can give some examples of how these combined and multinational forces are coming together to do multi-domain operations, like the JGSDF is doing combined domain, cross-domain operations.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I think, first of all, whenever we deploy forward an exercise and really rehearse alongside our combined partners, I think that we learn just as much as I think we are sharing with our partners. So our ability to understand particularly interoperability of how we will operate at a human level, how our technology will operate together, and how our procedures will work is something that I think is exceptionally important in each one of these exercises and rehearsals. One area where I see a great benefit is previously, years before, we would normally be episodic during these exercises. We would deploy to an exercise, we would establish the network, we would train as part of that exercise, and then we would shut down and then redeploy. I was once asked, how do you know if integrated deterrence is working? I think it's really challenging to measure, but one positive indicator is now what we are seeing is our ability to stay post the exercise as we start pulling the thread. So right now we finished Orient Shield as part of our work with the JGSDF. First multi-domain task force remains in Japan to continue to build upon that interoperability and really infusing additional experimentation and additional objectives that we learned just during Orient Shield. Follow that up with, we're going to tie that into a Marine Corps-led exercise, Resolute Dragon, that is coming up. So now we're pulling in a joint partner and again showing value and optionality to the joint commander alongside our combined partners to learn those additional lessons. And then first MDTF will then hand that over to third MDTF who will be coming over and really run a follow-on exercise and rehearsal called Yamasakura. So it really gains this synergy, and I think it is only enabled by Landpower being on the land, being in these exercises, conducting these rehearsals, being side by side, learning about our network, learning about our systems. And I would also say that even outside of those exercises, the increased cooperation as equipment development and modernization is being done, the dialogue that is occurring between our two countries and multiple countries to look at what those potential solutions may be has also increased, which I think is a very favorable sign.
Can I have a comment?
But please.
非常にいい評価をしていただきましてありがとうございます。
Thank you for the evaluation or comments toward the exercise orientation.
YS やオリエントシールドは MDO と CDO のコラボレーションする極めて貴重な機会だと思っています。
I believe Orient Shield and Yamasakura exercise is extremely important and a rare opportunity to improve our cross-domain and multi-domain operation collaboration.
3つの狙いがあります。
We have three purpose and objectives.
一つは総合運用性、日米の総合運用性を高めることです。
One is to improve our interoperability.
2点目は装備の能力、先ほど言及がありましたが、装備の能力がどんどん向上してきます。
And second is equipment thing.
例えばジェネラルフリン大将がおっしゃられましたけど、陸上自衛隊の予算はこの本年度から来年度にかけてまた増えていきます。そのお金はおそらくスタンドオフミサイルであるとか電磁作戦、いわゆる CDO 部隊の防衛力整備に使用されます。
So the General Fulin said Japan's budget, government decided to increase our defense budget, and most of the budget is allocated to introducing new equipment, including standoff missile, which will be able to contribute to the future collaboration of multi-domain operation and cross-domain operation.
陸上自衛隊の装備の能力が上がり、米陸軍の装備の能力が上がると、装備の能力が上がった者同士でさらにまた検証を繰り返す必要があります。
So once our equipment capability has been increased, we need to test and demonstrate whether it will work out or not.
ここは極めて重要なポイントです。
I think that this is a very important point.
3つ目はそういうことを陸上自衛隊と米陸軍がやっているということを中国に見せることが重要です。
And the third is, this is very important, we conduct messaging or disseminate what we are doing to China.
効果的に発信することが極めて重要です。
And effective messaging is the key.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Colonel Rose, you want to
I think just the
chime
one.
in?
Yeah, thank you. I think just the one piece of the multi-domain task force's capability that doesn't get quite as much airplay is our ability not just to deliver effects, but to sense the environment. Extended range sensing is a key piece of what it is that we're designed to do. So to be able to see forward and to sense forward is critical for not just the joint forces intelligence picture, but really our multinational partners' intelligence picture as well. So as we bring that capability into the theater, with the design from the outset to be able to share this information in order to achieve interoperability, potentially interchangeability, in times of crisis and conflict, is a key piece of how we actually are also building our capability through pathways. So the sensing component is largely something that we want to continue to stress. And I think what General Harrington referred to in our ability to show value to a multinational partner such as the CIFC in the Philippines, is a critical piece of that, and it contributes to the integrated deterrence picture as well.
But it's staying on the MDTFs for a minute, and we were talking about, yes, there's a lot of fires in there, but there's a lot of a lot of other effects, non-kinetic effects, and yes, there's a lot of air defense that is of necessity built into the MDTS. I wonder if maybe the two commanders might stay on this for a minute and kind of give us an update on how you're thinking about that offense-defense integration, number one. And then number two, I think it was you, General Harrington, who really emphasized that these are enablers of the joint force. I mean, and the MRC is a poster child of that, taking Navy vertical launching systems and putting them on wheels with Navy effectors in them as well. So, you know, how are you coming on thinking about the offense-defense integration piece? And then likewise, do we need more of that joint force enablers, especially given the neighborhood that you're in?
So I think that's a great question. If you look at the ADA capability that you're talking about, again, we are a part of that theater enabling. So as we look at, you know, our capabilities, that augments and it really provides additional options for the theater as we look at defense. It also provides the ability to offset as we look at, you know, certain layering of our forces, small, scalable, survivable, maneuverable ground forces, being able to provide a certain sense of self-survivability or being able to tie in with other assets. The second, as we look at some of our larger assets, how do we help and enable in that protection to do that organically, again, to provide optionality and be able to offset some of the theater level requirements. That is really what we are looking at. As we go forward, you know, the solution really is, that we're looking at is that indirect fire protection capability enabled by IBCS to really get any sensor tied with any shooter as we look at protection of these systems. And when we look at offensive, defensive, you know, we're even looking right now with some of our emerging capabilities that as we are sensing the environment across all domains, and even with our air defense capabilities, hey, we are able to take that information, process that pretty quickly, you know, into targetable data, and be able to push that over, you know, to an offensive capability. This is where I think it is really important for us to be a key part of the joint force, to look at that joint force network. You know, how are we going to enable multiple services with multiple capabilities, you know, being able to collect, sense, make sense, and then quickly disseminate that information to a shooter who needs it. And it's a lot of effort that we have placed, you know, with the Joint Fires Network, and I know that 3rd MDTF has done that as well.
And my only add to that is that really what targeting is built on is data. And where we potentially didn't, you know, attribute this only to me, where we potentially didn't label the IFPC correctly, where we use protection as the basis for the naming of an air defense capability, what it really is, it's the offensive defensive pairing of fires that's going to be built upon the same data sets. So as long as our data sets are integrated into a fusion engine that allows us to, at speed, build that picture and apply capability either in a defensive way or using that same data set in an offensive way, it all comes back to having access to the right data. And the integrated force protection in conjunction with the theater level integrated air and missile defense capability, as long as those systems are able to talk together and fuse that data, we're going to be in a much better position to be able to provide those options at speed and scale.
Mm. You know, I don't think anybody's mentioned Talisman Sabre yet. Apologies if I missed it, but you know, as I think about that, I think about the HIMARS and the Patriot tests in the Philippines recently. We've talked a little bit about exercises, but General Flynn, I wonder if you might want to talk a little bit about wargaming as well. Maybe some insights, whether it be tabletops or larger war games that you are seeing and that are helping drive the path forward.
Yep. So a couple of years ago, we started a war game series called Unified Pacific War Game. And that began in 21. It is sort of in partnership with Pacific Fleet and the U.S. Navy. The Unified Pacific War Game series we've had out in Hawaii the last 2 years. I think one of the important, there were 7 insights in the one that we did in 21. And 2 of the 7 insights were, one was on intel support to joint targeting, which is where we looked at our ability to collect, see, sense, and understand, and share that information with the joint force and with our multinational partners. And then the second insight that we wargamed again in 22 was contested logistics. Why? So we had 7 insights. 2 of them we went and did a deeper dive on. I'll talk about the second one, contested logistics, because actually we did another war game this past year, and I know General Hellwig is in here, that had 2 components to it. It had sustainment for the theater, and then it had medical logistics as part of the ability to sustain the force. But maybe the most important thing was we took the insights from the war game, the big war game, the insights from the smaller focus war game on one of the insights on contested logistics, and that's actually how we built the Joint Logistics Command that Major General Hellwig of 8th Theater Sustainment Command commanded as a part of CJTF 660, which is commanded by Lieutenant General Brunson from 1st Corps in the 15-nation, 30,000 joint and multinational forces that were in Australia. Why is that important? Because the joint petroleum over the shore demonstration of capabilities that we moved into Australia, the joint logistics over the shore, the watercraft, the material, the fuel, the commodities that were brought in. Candidly, we had equipment coming out of our pre-positioned stocks in Korea. We had equipment that was coming out of pre-positioned stocks in Japan. We had equipment coming off of APS-3 afloat. 7th Trans Brigade from Fort Eustis, Virginia, came out and was a central part of being able to put petroleum over the shore and logistics over the shore, and we demonstrated that as part of Talisman Sabre to test out the very insights that we picked up from the war game. So, like all good war games, they should identify capabilities that you have and capability gaps that you do not. And so what we did was we tried to pressure test that in real time during Talisman Sabre, and we put a Joint Logistics Command in charge of it under a combined joint task force. And of course, now we have better insights on what is the equipment mismatches that we have, what are the manning mismatches that we have, what are the organizational gaps that we have, how do we do this for the joint force, and how do we synchronize these things in a combined multinational and joint force. And so all of that analysis then pours back into the wargaming effort that we have ongoing. In fact, next week, some of us, to include myself, are going up to the Naval War College to participate in the Navy's portion of the wargaming effort, which is called Global. And so that sharing of insights and understandings and analysis from the wargaming, that is a really important part of the campaign of learning that we're trying to do out in the Pacific between U.S. Army Pacific and the Land Component Command, and then U.S. Pacific Fleet and the Maritime Component Command.
Great. Anybody else want to jump in on that, General?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. 陸上自衛隊につきまして、ウォーゲームはやはり米陸に比べると多少遅れているように感じています。
So in JGSDF, to be honest, we haven't done many war games.
しかしながら連動能力を向上させるためにはテーブルトップエクササイズとフィールドトレーニングエクササイズ、これを組み合わせながら連動を上げていく必要があります。
But I think that in order to improve our capability, the collaboration of TTX and FTX is important.
先ほどジェネラルからフリン大将からありました YS というのは TTX の部類に入ります。
And as General Flynn said, YS is considered to be part of TTX.
これを実動の場面に移すためには陸上自衛隊演習というのを来年度大きな陸上自衛隊全体が参加する実動の演習をやります。
And in order to improve and reflect such exercise, we will have the JGSDF large-scale exercise next year. This is an actual operation.
実際に部隊を動かし機動展開させてみて、そこでいろんな課題が出るはずですので、それをしっかり評価して直していく、改善していくことが重要だと思っています。
So I believe we will find out a lot of challenges of something we should improve more. And then we would like to incorporate such results into our future exercise.
先ほど南西作戦において課題の一つに挙げていた兵站についてお話をします。
Now, I'd like to share my understanding of the logistics things in southwestern area.
兵站の演習というのは非常に難しい演習で実際に物をたくさん動かすということができません。
I think the exercise related to logistics is very difficult to conduct because moving the actual stockpiles is difficult.
それゆえしっかりとそういう場面にウォーゲームというのを取り込んでいっていく方がいいかなと思っています。
Therefore, I think the war game is one of the exercises we can utilize to improve our logistics capability.
もう一つについては RSOI です。
And one more is RSOI.
実際に米陸軍を受け入れて展開させる計画をしっかり作ってこれを少しずつ動かしていく必要があると思っています。
So the planning process is very important. We need to accept the U.S. Army forces in Japan and also the mobile such units in Japan.
本年度そして来年度の山桜演習において取り込んでいきたいと思いますので協力をお願いしたいと思います。
So our SOI is an area we would like to incorporate into our Yamasakura exercise. So it is appreciated your continued support.
Yeah, and we did some of that in Australia, but I know that we need to continue to work on that. It's a massive problem, particularly as you scale up in some of these exercises. So it's great, great,
thank you very much.
great comment.
So the only thing that I was going to, just the importance of unified Pacific when it looks at from the MDTF perspective, is then being able to take that and really apply it to our capability gaps. The options that we have got to be able to provide, that joint force, in order to close some of those gaps have really helped inform us, inform our proponency, and for our industry partners as we start looking at how do we do continuous transformation and what do we need to experiment with and does it help fill joint and combined gaps, just really important for us.
Great, thank you. First of all, we've still got some microphones here. They're still powered. If you'd like to come up and ask a question to the panel, please don't be shy. Come on up. And if you could just identify yourself, sir.
Yeah, hello. Thank you, panelists. My name is Chad Anderson from Imperium Research Lab. My question is for General Flynn. Are there specific AI technologies or applications that you believe could significantly impact the outcome of conflict with China? And how is the military preparing for their deployment?
Let me go to specific applications of AI tools, but I'll talk about what we're doing at my headquarters. But let me jump over to the MDTFs and Mike or Bernie can give a couple points there.
Thank you. So we're very much interested in any sort of automation, right? That can accelerate our understanding. So kind of the buzz terminology, dirty, dangerous, or dull. If we can automate that, then we certainly should be doing that, right? Because humans shouldn't have to do jobs per se that a machine can do. And how do you design that human-machine teaming? The other piece of it is what we're working in terms of the joint networked command and control that Indo-Pacom is driving is going to be dependent on some automated automation in order to work at the speed and scale that we're talking about. I mean, there needs to be thousands of decisions that occur in the course of a day, and how do you enable that, at least that awareness or acceleration of a commander to set parameters that perhaps a machine can assist with the execution thereof. So we're heavily invested in that effort.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would also underscore is just the need to be able to, and the opportunity to do that at multiple levels, at multiple classification levels, and even just the ability to take commercially available information, and something that we are learning alongside our allies and partners right now is the wealth of information that if you're able to collect that, apply AI to inform decision making, I think is really impactful, and it really has helped us increase our interoperability with each of these headquarters.
I worry about processing power and storage capacity because that's what we're going to need forward. because when we're cut off, we're going to need the ability to process all the data and all the information that Bernie and Mike were just talking about, and we're going to have storage capacity. And so sometimes I'm not sure I get the feedback on that. I can tell you that if you can bring the tools, we'll use the tools. But often what we get is, hey, we got to give you a bunch of people, and here's a tool. I don't need more people, I need tools.
Thank you.
There's a question.
Ma'am, over here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for teeing me up over there. This is about unsupervised machine learning. That's next level up from AI. Thank you, gentlemen, for the briefing today. General Harrington, this question is for you, sir. Regarding emerging capabilities and for cyber objectives, we're talking about machine speed tactics, as you just stated. As we want to protect our multi-domain networks with defense and offense cyberspace operations, machine speed attacks with machine speed response, fully autonomous, no humans in the loop. Do you expect to see fully autonomous coming in to augment those human teams to deter adversaries? We're talking about machines for manpower. Thank you.
And could you identify yourself real quick?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Sally Kenyon Grant, Dark Trace Federal.
Thank you.
I think it kind of feeds upon the last answer, really, about being able to leverage any opportunity for us to be able to conduct that processing at that speed of relevance while still, I believe, having that man, that soldier on the loop as it enables decision making. So I think as we are processing, I think as much as we can do without human interaction, utilizing multiple applications is where we need to be. And then as that transitions into a decision that needs to be made, having the humans do what only humans can do to apply that judgment.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mohammed Massaquoi, Joint Staff J5. In regards to General Flynn's mentioned command and control, it's one of the elements of the Joint Interior Lines. As it pertains to synchronizing long-range flyers during conflict, if the authorities you need are granted to the MDTF, first, do you see the MDTF working with or replacing the combatant commander's J3 fire cell? And B, if Army long-range fires batteries are tasked with sinking ships, do you see the Navy seeking OPCON of those Army batteries? Or do you envision the MDTF deconflicting maritime-focused fires? And that's for either one of the MDTF commanders.
Yeah, Mike, Bernie, you can grab the second part. I'll come back to the first part after you touch on the second.
Okay. So we see ourselves as needing to be integrated with the joint partners. The command and control, the command relationships is something that we're still sorting out, frankly, as we experiment through joint exercises so they can better understand our capabilities. But ultimately, land forces need to be supported on the land, and we're never gonna be disconnected from our theater army headquarters in terms of a command relationship. So never will we necessarily detach. However, we may have a supporting or supported or direct type of relationship with those supported elements.
So what I've learned is you have got to be comfortable with each. Like you've got to, in this scenario, if you truly are applying multiple options to that joint force, you have to be comfortable with being take-on to the fleet, to be able to provide a very specific non-kinetic, kinetic effect or both. So I think just that ability to understand in that model, and there are times that we are the engagement authority, and what does that mean when we synchronize and incorporate other services assets that are then take-on to us. We have to be really comfortable getting to there, and that's what we rehearse in theater.
I'm gonna go to an organizational construct that many are not aware of that is that has happened at the same time. So as Bernie described, back to the 17, 18, actually even before that with General Milley, the multi-domain task force, of which there's 2 commanders up here and there's 1 in Europe, there's 3 of those right now, but that's not the only organizational adjustment the Army has made. There is a theater fires element that has been recreated in my headquarters, and there's a theater information advantage directorate. So the combination of lethal and non-lethal planning, synchronization, coordination, and targeting with the joint force enabled by multi-domain task forces that are forward, working with combined joint task forces at the operational level of war, read core headquarters, and then right down to tactical formations where you have divisions out there operating in all domains, working with the joint force in support of the joint force, but also bringing to bear the multinational partners that we are operating inside the sovereign territory of, by the way, at their invitation and with their consent to do the things that we need to do. So I think that's another really important part of what this continual transformation that General George is talking about right now. A lot of attention is on PRISM or is on hypersonics, and it's on the platform and the weapon system. There are equal to, if not greater gains that are being made by organizational adjustments that are going on from the Security Force Assistance Brigade to the Multi-Domain Task Force to the Theater Fires Element to the Theater Information Advantage Directorates that are now being elevated at the theater level in support of the operational level of war, in support of tactical formations that are conducting tactical actions that are solving operational and strategic challenges. And I just want to put that out there because that does not have a lot of notoriety, but those organizations inside of Theater Joint Land Component Commanders, again, give us an enormous advantage inside the intelligence support to joint targeting because it actually gives us real capabilities to do that for the joint force.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Randy Hill, University of Southern California, Institute for Creative Technologies. You may have already answered this question, but how does JADC2 relate to what we've been talking about here? You know, talk about technologies, how they might be useful. You're talking a little bit about lessons learned from campaigns of learning and games, but what is JADC2 a real thing? Is it going to be doctrine? How's that being shaped?
Again, I'll go to the multi-domain task force commanders, and then if General Kobayashi wants to make a comment, but I'll come back and talk about what we're doing with Project Convergence and how that contributes to.
Yeah, and I'll tip Mike, because he's just done a ton of work here, you know, with 3rd MDTF being forward or being in Hawaii, but really looking at the Joint Fires Network and how do we establish that network that is tied for the theater in order to enable, you know, data to be, you know, collected, processed, and disseminated, you know, appropriately through multiple services.
It's really what the theater is trying to get after is the practical application of a conceptual topic of JADC2. So joint all-domain command and control. When I say joint networked command and control, really there's some, what I'm trying to be is synonymous there ultimately, but the Joint Fires Network is how Indo-PACOM is organizing itself to provide an integrated command and control where we've got a common intel picture, a common operating picture, where we've got an infinite number of sensors that can provide data that has some levels of automation to enable commander awareness and commander decision. And that's ultimately what CJADC2 is all about. It just happens to be the way in which Indo-PACOM is rolling the concept out is set to fit gaps that have been identified inside of our joint formations to be able to operate jointly.
And the last piece that I would say is just and how are you able to do that in a DDIL environment to be able to process kind of at the edge, you know, while doing that simultaneously in an area where we put a lot of effort, as we do expect, you know, to potentially operate in that DDIL environment.
I'm excited about the work we're doing out there with the Joint Fires Network as a sort of an element of JADC2. The thing that I get concerned about, though, is scale. When we do these tests, it's a couple of airplanes, a couple of fighters, couple of maybe a tanker here, a couple of ships. That's not how we operate. So when you have thousands, tens of thousands, land forces that are distributed across an expansive geographic area with all types of conditions going on in their battle space, to include effects that are occurring from adversaries or just things that are going on inside of each one of these countries with cyber penetrations, phishing, space disruption. I get concerned sometimes that we pat ourselves on the back because we linked a couple of airplanes with a couple of ships with a couple of guys or a couple of nodes on the ground. That's not the scale that I'm talking about. Now, you put 30,000 in Australia and you stretch them from Perth to Townsville, to Darwin, to Manila, to Guam, to Hawaii, Alaska, Joint Base Lewis McChord, to Tokyo, to Seoul. Now you're talking about being able to really stress a joint fires network that has to be able to operate as a part of a combined joint all-domain command and control network. And then you add in mission partner environment, it gets, pretty complicated. And I think we need to create some simplicity throughout this whole thing and be a little bit honest with ourselves too. Sometimes, we say we did a great job because we just linked a few things up, but there's an awful lot of work that goes on there. I'm going to come back to a comment that Mike Rose made earlier. This is about data. Access to data, permissions for data, storage of data, processing power, and our ability to have that as an advantage forward, that is going to change for us. And if you can, in the previous question, if we can get some tools, really good AI tools, without a whole lot of people that have to come with it, now we're talking turkey. That would be really helpful.
Well, I might just throw a question again to the two commanders, and then after that, perhaps turn it over to you, General Kobayashi and General Flynn, for some closing remarks. But for you two gentlemen, I wonder if you could just sort of give us a snapshot of where the MDTFs are in their journey, in the evolution, and also what kind of problems and challenges ought we be thinking about. General Harrington, you talk about them as experimentations in terms of the authorities, especially for the MDTF. So if you maybe say a couple minutes on those questions, then we'll close out.
Yeah, so I walked through where we are, currently as far as first MDTF, and we're very fortunate to have 3 of our battalions that are now fielded with our extended range, or correction, our multiplied domain effects battalion with its multiple companies within. Within those companies, that is where we are experimenting. Our ability, to sense and make sense at the scale, at the ranges, and at the speed required is an area where we put a lot of emphasis on bridging those gaps and being able to, just like General Flynn and Colonel Rose mentioned, being able to take this data, make sense of it, and then be able to disseminate it effectively. Our long-range fires battalion walked you through where we are in HIMARS, mid-range capability, and our long-range hypersonics. For me, it is about getting that capability forward into the second island chain to show that combat credible capability, to learn the lessons you can only learn in that terrain, in that environment with your soldiers, and really to show and be a part of that integrated deterrence. Our protection capability, it really is starting to learn those lessons as IFPC is being developed. How do we mesh our offensive and defensive capabilities in order to provide those multiple options and those capabilities, for that joint force commander, and then sustainment. As we look at our sustainment model, it cannot be a traditional BSB that we are used to seeing in our traditional BCTs. What are those very specific capabilities that we require based on our concept of employment is an area where, as they stand up this year, getting them forward into the first island chain, tied with ATSC, tied with our allies and partners, to be able to really create and transform that unit as needed.
For 3rd MDTF, only a year old, what I would offer is very quickly have we drawn on lessons learned from 1st MDTF and seen opportunity to operate in the region. Within 6 months, we were already contributing to exercise series. We deployed on pathways this summer. So we're going to continue to seek those opportunities to deploy into the theater while we're concurrently building tangible capability that can be added on and continue to expand the overarching concept as the material solutions, the tactics, techniques, and procedures, and the manpower come online for third MDTF. One of the things that I embrace most about the unique position of being in command of an MDTF is seldom in our Army do we have a concept followed immediately by manning without material solutions or a set of doctrine to guide us. But we've got the concept to help us as the MDTFs inform the formulation of doctrine, and we need to be the most forward-leaning and learning organizations amongst the Army, within the Army, because as really the practical application of the continuous transformation that the Army is moving towards multi-domain operations as our operating concept, we get to convey lessons back to the Army. We may not have gotten everything right from the initial drawing of the task organization, the anticipated fielding of equipment. So we get to experiment forward in theater. We get to be first chair participants in the exercise series that the Joint Force is running, and Project Convergence and some of the other large-scale exercises that the Army puts a lot of resources towards. So we are gathering those lessons and continuously pushing them back into our Army to drive the evolution of multi-domain operations.
Great. General, go ahead.
今の話を聞いていると MDO についてもまだ課題があり進化をしながら形を変えつつあるというふうに意識しています。
So through your comments, I learned that still MDO is on the verge of or on the process of improvement. Is my understanding correct?
南西諸島で共に共同作戦を行う陸上自衛隊としては我々が持っている CDO 部隊これも同じく課題を共有しながら進化させる必要があると思いました。
So therefore, I think that JGSDF CDO unit should be improved with the collaboration of the U.S., in particular in the southwestern area.
究極的には多国間キルウェブを構築する必要があると思っています。
I think our supreme goal should be the building multilateral or multinational kill web.
最終的にはプロジェクトコンバージェンスというところも我々取り組んでいますが、そこについてもしっかりと連携していきたいと思っています。
So we would like to continue to work together in light of project convergence, and it is appreciated to the cooperation.
Closing remarks to you, sir.
Well, first of all, thank you, Tom, General Kobayashi, thanks, Bernie, Mike, and thank to all of you for coming today. I'll just end on this thought. There is and I said it in the beginning, this is a very serious threat that is facing the region and the globe in the Indo-Pacific. And more than a year ago, I made a comment about war being long, unpredictable, violent, and human. And you're seeing that today in Europe, and you're seeing it again today in the Middle East. And we have to do everything that we possibly can as a nation to get into the right place with the right capabilities in support of our allies and partners as a counterweight and as a method of deterring war. And so I believe that the three ways that I outlined in the beginning to you, between training in the region at JPMRC and extending that training into the region for our allies and partners, by campaigning through Operation Pathways into the region, and then culminating in that campaigning, we build joint interior lines as positional advantage, the creation of operational endurance to counter what is insidious, incremental, and irresponsible behavior on the part of a number of adversaries in the region, the most consequential being the People's Republic of China. So in my view, this region, while often labeled as an air and maritime region, it is not. It is a joint theater, it has joint challenges, and it requires joint and multinational solutions, and we are a central part of that joint and multinational force, because in my view, Landpower is the security architecture that binds this region together because of the centrality land forces play to protecting their territorial integrity and defending their national sovereignty, because that is what is being violated right now. So thank you very much again, Tom, General Kobayashi, Mike, Bernie, and all of you for coming here today, and I just appreciate the support from all of you and AUSA. Thanks.
And thank you. And thank you, sir, for your leadership. I was asked to pass along that Dr. Mara Carlin, who's performing the duties of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, wanted to be here, but real-world events took her away. But she gives her regards as well. So thank you again.
Thank you.